Hello world, Lisa Friedrichsen here, a professor from Johnson County Community College, and this is the third in 3 short screencasts on form elements and how to code an HTML form. We've talked about the form tag, its required attributes. We've also talked about the name attribute and how you're going to have to connect and cooperate with your backend developer to know what values to put in there to pass your data successfully. We've also talked about how the input element, it's a closed element, creates these boxes, creates the radio buttons, creates the number spinner control, creates the range control, the checkbox control, and even these submit and reset buttons, thereby being workhorse of the HTML form. But there are a few other little things that I want to talk about. Let's start with the checkbox. Sometimes I'll see people choose the wrong type for the question at hand. The checkbox is simply a yes-no question. If you have a yes-no question on your hands, either keep me on your email list, yes, or keep me on your email list, no, that's appropriate for a checkbox, as opposed to a radio button is used for a question that has mutually exclusive values. What is your favorite? I can either choose iPhone or I can choose Android. But as I choose one or the other, I see the bouncing ball move. So these would not be appropriate checkboxes because I want the user to choose one favorite. I only want one answer to go to the server. So if we look at the code behind this part of the form, we'll see that I have type equals radio for the radio buttons, and that the trick to getting the ball to bounce between your radio buttons is to give those radio buttons the same name equals something attribute value. And I've called it favorite because this is one field with 2 different options that you are trying to choose between to send that value to the favorite field. So with this attribute value of, I'll either send iPhone to the favorite field or Droid to the favorite field. The only time you see name equals something repeated in your form is when you're using these radio buttons and you have mutually exclusive options for that field. Now, another tricky thing is to decide when am I going to use radio buttons for one choice, one mutually exclusive choice between values, and when am I going to use a drop-down list. The drop-down list also provides one value, mutually exclusive value, for a drop-down list for a field. And it's created not with the input element, but rather with the select and option elements. So the select element creates a drop-down list, and then every item in this drop-down list goes between the option, close option tags. And the value of each is an attribute value placed in the opening option tag. The text that you see here is the text that the user is going to see on the drop-down list. The choice between making a drop-down list with select and option elements or radio buttons really depends on the amount of screen space you want to take up. Obviously, it's faster simply to click between radio buttons. But if I had a very long drop-down list, for example, if I changed this text box into select and option values and I wanted to list 5, 10, or 50 states, it would be a lot of space on the screen to make 50 radio buttons. So in general, if you have more than a handful of options, you're better off with a select drop-down list. If you have only 2, 3, 4, a very small number of options for your field, then radio buttons might be more appropriate. Text area element is the final element that we have not discussed yet. It's simply for a larger area. So anytime you have a comments or just a free form field where you want to allow someone to type a sentence or a paragraph, you'll probably use a text area element. The style sheet for your form can get wild and woolly as well. Because there's so many different types of input boxes, your selector in your CSS gets a little crazy for your form too. And you can see that I've got input type equals radio, that's styling these radio buttons. I've got type equals number, that's styling this number, and type equals range, that's styling this range. So the selector for your input element can get a little crazy, given that you often want to apply different styles to different types of input elements. Thank you for listening.